Chapter 881. I believe you can definitely handle it. What's the meaning of this? Lin Che asked strangely. Gu Jingze replied, it means that someone thinks our family is intervening with the regime. Lin Che understood. This did not look like a small problem. If this spread, who knew how it would affect Gu Jingming's presidential title? Gu Jingze said, the factory must, therefore, be suspended temporarily. The factory recently obtained several large orders including those from M Nation, A Nation, the United Kingdom, and Europe. They will lose more than several billion yuan. Moreover, it is unclear if they can regain their trust and continue cooperating in the future. Lin Che heard this and her heart sank. It sounds serious. Is this factory that great? The factory does not produce the weapons directly. Instead, it produces parts that many of the most advanced countries need. They use the most advanced technology to create the best quality, so the selling price is also very high. C nationals are more self-sufficient, so this meticulous work can be taken over by C nation factories. But now, they are forced to stop working. Gu Jingze walked to the window. I just passed the factory to Mo Jingyan and this happens. Now, Mo Jingyan is nowhere to be found. What, are you saying that this might be related to Mo Jingyan? Lin Che thought that the Black Eagle was not a good person, to begin with. It was not like they did not pit against them before. He had been working closely with Gu Jingze recently, so Lin Che also thought that he did not seem so bad anymore. Now, he was linked to this matter again. She said, he just obtained the factory and caused trouble. You also said that he always had beef with the Gu family. This time, he intentionally got close to you and pretended to be friends with you. He took the chance and immediately betrayed you. He was just looking for another way to betray you, wasn't it? Gu Jingze turned around to look at her. You're much smarter today. Lin Che was speechless. This is a very obvious problem. Furthermore, I'm analyzing it seriously with you. Gu Jingze returned to stand in front of her and carried her to the bed. He continued, this needs to be dealt with slowly. Indeed, I did not take a proper look at Mo Jingyan and am angry for trusting him blindly. However, every decision in business brings a risk. They are all wagers. Even if I lose this one, it is nothing to me. Don't worry, I will be busy over the next few days because of this matter. Do your work. There's no need to worry about me, Lin Che said. Gu Jingze bent down to look at her face. I don't want you worrying about me either. Tell me that you're not worried. Yes, I'm not worried. Lin Che promised impatiently. Gu Jingze frowned and stared at her. You promised too quickly. How patronizing. Lin Che raised her brow. But how can I not be worried? I can't lie to you. I'll definitely be worried in one way or another, but I believe you'll be able to handle it. So, it's alright even if I worry over the next few days. I believe in your capability. Lin Che always thought that Gu Jingze was all-powerful, even now. But as his wife, she was definitely worried. She smiled and looked at him. He gazed at her deeply. She understood that even if it was for her, he absolutely would never let himself be beaten down. He was never someone who would admit defeat easily. He always moved forward without anyone's push or pull. He continually pushed himself to get stronger because he never liked losing. Now, with the addition of Lin Che and Gu Xinian, the ones he cared about, it was even more so that he would not allow himself to lose. When he thought of Lin Che, he wanted to protect her and give her the best life. It gave him much more strength. The anger he felt just now already dissipated miraculously when he looked into those clear, beautiful eyes of hers. He returned to his logical self, looked at Lin Che, smiled, and kissed her cheek. When Gu Jingze said that he was going to be busy, they really kept missing one another. When she was with the crew, he was at home. When she was at home, he was already out. When Lin Che returned today, she heard the maids talking about the factory incident. Although Gu Jingze already deployed his men to handle the matter, the family still felt that they mistrusted him and led to the loss of billions of yuan. Whether they could recoup their losses was another issue. As a result, the family was somewhat disappointed in Gu Jingze. After all, this was the first year he took charge of the family. When Gu Shand was the head, nothing like this ever happened. Gu Jingze just took over this position and such a huge matter arose. Everybody had their opinion on Gu Jingze. The maids chatted privately. I wonder if Sir would be asked to stop using his authority. But if Sir doesn't become head of the family, who will? Old master just had his surgery, but he is not that weak. I heard that some people want the old master to help manage the family again. But how will outsiders look at Sir? That is why Sir must be under a lot of pressure. Lin Che stood there and listened. She leaned against the wall and tried to think of ways she could help Gu Jingze. However, there was really nothing she could do to help. Lin Che wondered if she was useless. Sitting outside the set, Lin Che looked at the crew members walking around. She had no parts to film today, but she still came to the set. While she was daydreaming, someone suddenly appeared beside her. It was Situ Jing. He sat down noisily and looked at Lin Che. What's wrong? You look unhappy. Lin Che looked at Situ Jing with surprise. Hey, what are you doing here? Oh, I'm here as a guest. Don't you know? You, here as a guest. Lin Che rolled her eyes. She indeed did not know that this movie had quite a number of guest appearances. She never noticed. Situ Jing said, yes. The production crew promised to help promote my non-profit organization on the condition that I make a guest appearance. The crew saw Situ Jing talking to Lin Che and did not disturb them. Situ Jing looked at her. You haven't told me what exactly happened. Why do you look so terrible? Lin Che asked, haven't you heard about the recent incident with the Gu family? Oh, are you talking about the Gu family's military factory? Yes. I heard that Gu Jingze went to look for buyers to buy the factory. He wanted to legally change ownership to an entrepreneur before he resumed production. Huh, is that the solution? No, I only heard that he's looking for a buyer, but a military factory requires at least 10 billion yuan to purchase. Not many people have this spending power. Lin Che thought that if anything happened to these top-level giants, the average wealthy community could only watch. This figure was not something an average wealthy person could afford. Chapter 882, I can help him. In Gu Jingze's office. Qin Hao entered and said, Sir, Miss Yun is here. Gu Jingze said, I'm not seeing her. Qin Hao hastily replied, Miss Yun said that it's about the military factory. Gu Jingze looked up hesitantly. After a long pause, he finally nodded. Not long later, young Luo walked in. Seeing Gu Jingze inside, she quickly smiled at him. Jingze, how are you? Gu Jingze looked up with not a tinge of warmth in his eyes. When he gazed at her, he asked coldly, what do you want? Young Luo realized that ever since Lin Che returned, Gu Jingze had been colder towards her. She felt disappointed. However, young Luo knew that what she was going to say today was very important. It was so important that it might shake Gu Jingze. Jingze, I heard that you've been troubled over your military factory. Is that so? Seems like word gets out fast, Gu Jingze said plainly. Young Luo asked meekly, why didn't you tell me? I may be able to help. Gu Jingze said, I do not have any deep relationship with Miss Yun, to begin with, so I did not want to bother Miss Yun with such matters. Young Luo felt dull jabs at her heart. She fiddled with her fingers gently. Jingze, you never called me Miss Yun before. You've always called me Young Luo. What happened? Ever since Lin Che returned, it's like you've changed into a different person. Does Lin Che not like your relationship with me? Gu Jingze raised a brow slightly and looked at her. Miss Yun, firstly, I have nothing to do with you. Secondly, you're right, my wife does not like me getting too close to women. Young Luo's eyes hardened. The mighty Gu Jingze actually said that he did not want to interact with women because of his wife. What right did Lin Che have? Why did he have to lower himself in front of Lin Che? However, young Luo could only struggle to contain all these awful feelings inside her. She could not voice them out. She looked at Gu Jingze. What if I tell you that my family is willing to buy your factory? Gu Jingze's distant gaze slowly focused on her. Young Luo said, I've already spoken with my dad. He's willing to help you and fork out the money. After all, our families are tied in business. Also, you and I are friends too. Gu Jingze scoffed and looked at her. There's no need to, Miss Yun. The Gu family will handle their own affairs. Jingze, don't be so calculative at a time like this. Just take it as you helped my heart valve research, so I'll help you. Can't we just work together? Anyway, we already have been working together. Or is it because our relationship was so deep and you got so close to me that you feel guilty when you face Lin Che now? Young Luo never spoke this much, but now, she was really anxious over Gu Jingze. Thus, she could not care less any longer. Gu Jingze looked up quietly at her. Do you really think so? Yes, I do think so. Really, Jingze, let's work together. Anyway, when we buy the factory, we'll definitely make it prosper too. Other families probably don't have the money and they can only sigh at the missed opportunity. Naturally, upon hearing that the Gu family wanted to sell their military factory, many wealthy people already thought of means and ways to get this prized piece. It was a pity that only a handful could fork out this sum. Gu Jingze said, "All right, I'll think about it." Young Luo then heaved a sigh of relief and smiled at him. "I only hope to help you." She gazed at him gently. For his sake, she was really willing to give up many things. She was even willing to give up her dignity as a Yun family member. She would rather be his mistress. Anyway, anybody could see who matched Gu Jingze better. Whoever matched better should be with him and the one who could not would merely be an extra. Young Luo left the office. Gu Jingze looked ahead quietly. When Qin Hao entered, Gu Jingze asked, "Has Young Luo left?" "Yes, sir." Gu Jingze asked, "Mo Jingyan is still uncontactable?" "Yes, he is nowhere to be found." Gu Jingze scoffed. "The factory is in trouble, Mo Jingyan is missing, and the Yun family are offering their help. Don't you think it's all too coincidental?" Qin Hao said, "Indeed. I'm also puzzled. It's 10 billion yuan. Not even the Lu family has so much money to spare. Why does it seem like the Yun family already prepared for it?" These wealthy families definitely had 10 billion yuan. However, they preferred to invest the money and make money grow. They wouldn't leave such a huge sum to rot in the bank. Thus, even a filthy rich person would not have that much cash to spare. Gu Jingze said, "It seems like someone thinks the foundation would be unstable because I just took over the reins. They want to challenge me." A murderous look flashed across Gu Jingze's eyes. The coldness in his eyes made Qin Hao tremble. He thought that this ballsy person was really sick of living. At this moment, Lin Che arrived at the Gu Industries. Upon entering, she suddenly saw Yun Luo who was on her way out. The two of them faced each other. Yun Luo smiled at her and thought about what Gu Jingze said just now. Because of Lin Che, he did not want to be close to her. Anger rose up in her heart. Lin Che had a pretty face and her figure was great too. In comparison, she looked much more fragile because she was sick. She was pale while Lin Che's face looked healthy and glowing. Yun Luo smiled. "Miss Lin." Lin Che scoffed. "Miss Yun, what a coincidence. To bump into her here." Lin Che rarely came here. This time, she came because she was worried about Gu Jingze, so she wanted to see him. She did not expect to meet Yun Luo here. Yun Luo said, "I know that Jingze is in a little trouble now and needed help, so I came to check on him." "Really, how thoughtful of you, Miss Yun." Lin Che looked at her discerningly. Her gaze made Yun Luo uncomfortable. She was merely an actress. What right did she have to be so arrogant? No matter what Yun Luo said, she did not seem to care. It was only because Gu Jingze doted on her. Yun Luo said, "But don't worry. I just talked to Gu Jingze. I'm willing to buy his military factory so he does not need to worry." Lin Che paused. She looked at Yun Luo. There was finally some surprise in her hostile demeanor. Yun Luo said, "You don't need to thank me. I'm not doing it for you. However, I also want to remind you that I have the ability to help him because I'm from the Yun family." Chapter 883. "I beg you to let Gu Jingze off, all right?" Yun Luo said, "Perhaps you think that Gu Jingze is already formidable, can hide the sky with one hand, and has the ability to do anything. In that case, this incident may enlighten you on the fact that wealthy people don't have such easy lives. Gu Jingze is bound to have his worries too. Furthermore, his worries are even more vexing than those of ordinary people, because ordinary people definitely cannot resolve them. But I can. So, Lin Che, there's something that I don't know if I should say." She lifted her dress and took a small step forwards. While looking at Lin Che, she said in anguish, "Lin Che, I know that you love Gu Jingze very much and that you're madly in love with him. After all, he may be the only man in the world who is like that. You've been together with him for so many years and there is a lot of depth in your relationship too. But I still want to beg you. I beg you to let him off. You really can't bring him any benefits by being with him. You will only hinder him. If something happens, you can't help him at all. I'm begging you, alright?" Lin Che looked at Yun Luo and wondered how she could be so shameless as to say such things. Begging her to let Gu Jingze off. Lin Che scoffed grimly as she looked at Yun Luo. "Move aside. Miss Lin." Yun Luo grabbed her hand with a rueful expression. Her imploring manner evoked even more worry in others. "I said, let go of me, Miss Yun." She tugged at Lin Che so forcefully and so unyieldingly, refusing to let go. It seemed as if she would not let Lin Che go no matter what unless Lin Che agreed. Lin Che had enough of her. She did not like having physical contact with strangers, to begin with, and Yun Luo was even being so shameless. Lin Che looked at her. "Do you think we're playing house? I told you to let go, so let go. Do you think that I'll give Gu Jingze up just because you're pulling me and refusing to let go? Don't think that things are so simple. You're Miss Yun, but that doesn't mean that everyone on earth is your mother. No one is obligated to give in to you." Yun Luo's body went limp and she suddenly collapsed onto the ground. Her lips turned purple and she sat on the ground unmoving. The servants of the Yun family who had accompanied her here were momentarily shocked and quickly gathered around her. Miss, what's wrong?" Yun Luo's heart disease had flared up. She looked up at Lin Che plaintively. You will ultimately live for many more years. But I may die anytime. You can meet many more men, but he's the only one I love. Why can't you give him up for me?" Beside her, her servant scoffed, "Miss, it's pointless for you to talk to such a selfish woman. She will cling on to Mr. Gu and refuse to let him go because she herself has a low status. Let's head to the hospital quickly. Anyway, everyone has eyes and can see for themselves who exactly is worthy of Mr. Gu and who is not." Humph. Then, they pulled Yun Luo out. Lin Che stood there and found it inconceivable. What ridiculous logic did all these people have? Did Lin Che have to give up even her own husband for her because she was weak? Was she the only one allowed to pick the best man on earth because she had a high status? Lin Che shook her head in disbelief. However, she sensed that the people around her were all staring as if speculating what exactly had happened here earlier. But everyone quickly pretended that nothing had happened when they saw Lin Che look up and glance at them. Then, they bowed their heads and went their way. Everyone had a tendency to pry into others' affairs. They wanted to know what exactly the lives of these rich young women were like. For once, they had witnessed such an incident. Naturally, news of the incident spread like wildfire in no time. However, there were many versions of the same incident. The public's ability to make up stories was really amazing. It really made people marvel at the fact that good scriptwriters were what the world lacked least. The reason why some dramas were so terrible must be because they had not properly used the power of the public. In reality, the experts were among ordinary people. When Lin Che arrived at the entrance of Gu Jingze's company, Qin Hao immediately walked up to her upon seeing her. Now, most people in the company knew that Lin Che could enter and leave as she wished. Naturally, they didn't dare to stop her and did not specifically notify Gu Jingze either. Her sudden arrival was slightly shocking. Qin Hao hastily said, "Madam, you're here. Sir is in his office." "Okay, I'm not disturbing him, right?" Lin Che's expression was still a little sour after what she had just been through. "Of course not. You would never be a disturbance no matter when you appear. Quick, come on in." Qin Hao trailed after Lin Che and opened the door for her eagerly. When it came to Lin Che, there was no need to knock on the door before entering or to notify Gu Jingze of her arrival either. If Sir saw her, he definitely would not blame anyone and would only welcome her cheerfully. Sure enough, Qin Hao saw Gu Jingze look up. His initially stormy gaze immediately softened when he saw Lin Che. "Why are you here?" Gu Jingze stood up and walked over to her, waving his hand for Qin Hao to leave first. Qin Hao quickly excused himself and left the space inside to the married couple. Lin Che looked at Gu Jingze. Didn't things take a turn for the better? Gu Jingze raised his eyebrows at her. How did you know? Did you see Yun Luo on your way up here just now? If not, she would not say something about a favorable turn and even with such a resolute gaze. Lin Che said, wow. You could even guess this. Gu Jingze tapped the tip of her nose. Of course. Your thoughts definitely can't escape my scrutiny. As he was very observant of people, to begin with, it was a simple matter for him to know what they were thinking as long as he wanted to. This was even more so when it came to Lin Che, he would only be even more observant. Thus, he could immediately sense when something was wrong with her. He asked, did Yun Luo say anything? Nothing much, she just said that she was going to help you. Gu Jingze asked, is that all? What else would she say? Lin Che now knew how to respond to his questions by asking him questions in return. Gu Jingze gazed deeply at her. He then lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it. I won't accept her help. Why not? Lin Che asked instead. Accept her help. Don't reject it for nothing. Anyway, she's willing to offer it, right? It's not like I'm selling my husband or that you'll have to get together with her if you take her money. Even if she gives you money, she won't have you either. She will be wasting her money anyway. Isn't that better? Humph. Gu Jingze looked at her. Can you really accept it? Lin Che nodded. Of course. She looked at Gu Jingze. I believe you. You definitely have your own way of handling the matter. I don't want you to change your plan because of me. Gu Jingze, don't bother about me. Do what you have to do. That's what I really think. No matter what tricks she plays, I will stand with you and watch her from our high vantage point. She's just a clown. Nothing she does will work. Wouldn't that be very fun? A long time passed before Gu Jingze gazed at her deeply. He tapped her on the forehead and said, you've turned bad now. Of course. They say that being close to bad people makes you bad. She tapped him on his hard stomach. He narrowed his eyes at her. Close. I'm still not close enough, I'll turn you even worse. He moved closer to her and she retreated sullenly. What are you doing? When the distance between us is in the negative, that's what real proximity is. If you don't believe me, we can give it a try. Chapter 884. You can insult me but you can't insult Lin Che. Lin Che's face turned completely red. She thought about how awkward it was that they turned the office into a mess each time she came. She did not know who outside was the one cleaning up the office either. However, Gu Jingze had already put his arms around her and could not resist placing her on the office desk. He looked down, pressed his body down on hers and looked at her. I like doing it here. Ew, what kind of weird fetish do you have? Lin Che said with her face flushed. Gu Jingze traced the top of her neck with his tongue. This way, when I'm working here every day, I will be able to recall that you were once in the throes of passion right here. I would feel as if I could see you anytime. What a pervert. She found that scene way too perverted. She did not expect Gu Jingze to be like this. However, Lin Che's entire body nevertheless stiffened because of the tip of his tongue. She hugged his body tightly and forcefully. Gu Jingze knew that she was nervous, but her body was more sensitive when she got nervous. Thus, he really enjoyed teasing her thoroughly here, to the point that she was completely wet. When he entered her, the process would be extremely smooth. It was truly an immensely satisfying feeling. However, Gu Jingze felt that women were made of water. This really was the truth. She was made precisely of water. Furthermore, she was so moist that it enchanted him. No matter where they were, he always felt as if he had not kissed her enough and had not had enough of her. After the two of them were done, Lin Che still felt a little embarrassed thinking about it. She was worried that she had been too loud and that someone else had heard her. The louder she was, the more excited he seemed to be, so he became more and more forceful as well. Just like that, the two of them went at it until they were too ashamed to see anyone in the end. It was only after they had rinsed themselves off that he said to her, to be honest, you don't have to worry about matters concerning Yun Luo. In actual fact, I have already made plans of my own. Lin Che asked, you know how to resolve it, right? Yes. Furthermore, I will let the people who betrayed me and schemed against me know what the consequences of doing so will be. I think the Fang family's disappearance was not enough of a reminder for them. Or perhaps they're so audacious because they think that they won't become the next Fang family. The people who betrayed him. Was he referring to Black Hawk? Lin Che looked at him and did not say anything more. She did not want to interfere too much in his affairs because she actually trusted him with all her heart. Lin Che found it very strange. No one in this world was almighty, but for some reason, he gave off that almighty feeling. Outside, everyone started spreading rumors that the Yun family was going to share weal and woe with the Gu family. Although they said it was the Gu family, in reality, everyone knew that it was actually because of Gu Jingze. Yun Luo personally made an appearance to offer her help. She had already made her intentions very clear. As for Gu Jingze, it was obvious that he had already agreed to accept the Yun family's help. Everyone could not help but start to speculate Gu Jingze's intentions. However, some people also said that Gu Jingze was left with no choice but to accept the Yun family's help now. As Gu Jingze had just assumed the position of the family head, his status had not solidified and people were already starting to doubt him now. It could not be considered a serious matter, nor could it be considered a minor issue. If it was not swiftly resolved, it would not only affect Gu Jingming but would also affect Gu Jingze's status in the Gu family. That was why the matter had to be dealt with sooner rather than later. This must have occurred to Gu Jingze, leaving him no choice but to accept help from the Yun family. During this time, everyone saw the renewed possibility of the Yun family forming an alliance with the Gu family. Even members of the Gu family felt that Yun Luo was indeed more suitable for Gu Jingze. If the two of them were together, it would definitely be to the advantage of the Gu family and the Yun family too, just like the strong alliance of the Lu family and the Gu family. Seeing that Gu Jingze had relaxed his stance and agreed to work with the Yun family, the members of the Gu family momentarily felt that Gu Jingze might have thought the same way too. It seemed that no matter how much Gu Jingze doted on Lin Che, he still had to come to terms with reality. In actual fact, even if he married Yun Luo, it did not automatically mean that he had to leave Lin Che. He could continue doting on Lin Che if he wanted to. In reality, it would be better for him to take it in stride since he could have it both ways. However, they had previously thought that Lin Che was definitely going to be the mistress of the Gu family after returning to C Nation, but her position had started to waver. It seemed that it would still be a little difficult for Lin Che to be the mistress of the house without some status. All else aside, she had nothing to be confident about. If she became the mistress, the masses would not be easily convinced. It seemed that Lin Che was ultimately still not good enough. Looking at her status now, she was definitely in a precarious position. People were also talking about how Lin Che had already gone up against Yun Luo at the company that day. The two of them were like fire and water. Lin Che had even pushed Yun Luo and triggered her illness. She had been terribly unreasonable. Others said that Lin Che was so furious upon knowing that her status was being threatened that she wanted to kill Yun Luo. Unfortunately, Yun Luo was lucky and was also the young miss of the Yun family. She was willing to spend any amount of money. Once she got to the hospital, she preserved her life after spending a large amount of money. There were all sorts of stories going around. Yu Minmin called Lin Che to talk to her about this. Lin Che found it extremely funny. Yu Minmin said, "It seems like you really have to think about it now. Think about how to elevate your status." Lin Che said, "I will. You have to look after your baby too. Don't worry about me. Gu Jingze is already dealing with this and I will pay attention to it too. Don't get involved." Yu Minmin merely felt that this incident had ultimately arisen because of Gu Jingming. Now, it was snowballing and had even dragged Lin Che down. It was seriously frustrating. And Yu Minmin was not the only angry one. In the office, Gu Jingze narrowed his eyes when he saw these rumors and immediately threw the tablet computer to the ground. He looked at Qin Hao. Who are the ones spreading these rumors? Qin Hao thought that these people in the company were in for it. How dare they speak ill of the madam and even spread rumors? Of course, Gu Jingze's heart ached for Lin Che when he heard all this. He was also furious that everyone actually dared to criticize her like this. It was fine to insult him, but if they dared to insult Lin Che, they were definitely challenging his bottom line. Gu Jingze looked straight ahead and said slowly and leisurely, "I think our maids are becoming more and more unruly. And don't these idle people in the company have too much free time? Did they not have anything to do? The company doesn't give them such good welfare to gossip. Are they deceiving me on account of my generosity? His eyes twitched and he said bluntly, Qin Hao, find out who spread these rumors. Clean up the Gu family as well. Kick out all the servants who aren't willing to continue working for the Gu family. Exile them from C Nation and never hire them again. Yes sir. Qin Hao felt a wave surge forth and a blast of cold air blow at him. He dared not say another word and quickly went to deal with these matters. He prayed ardently that these rumors would vanish completely one day. This would also serve as a deliberate show of strength to warn everyone to wake up. They were literally dreaming if they thought that Gu Jingze would treat Lin Che with an ounce of unfairness. Chapter 885. Release the news and wait for them to take the bait. In no time, Qin Hao had done as instructed. Beating the dog before the lion, they brought the people who had gone online and spread these rumors before out of the Gu family. They deported them out of C Nation and imposed a lifelong ban on their return. Immediately, the servants of the Gu family shut their mouths. They knew that they were not allowed to talk excessively. During their training, the first rule they were told was that they could not engage in gossip. However, the situation in the Gu family had been getting messy recently. Thus, they were on tenterhooks as well and had somewhat neglected the rules. Now that Gu Jingze had given them a reminder, everyone became cautious once again. They definitely would not let outsiders get wind of the news no matter what they thought or witnessed. As for the employees of Gu Industries who had spread these rumors, they were all fired immediately as well. Gu Jingze was so assertive that the situation in the Gu Industries immediately quietened down considerably. Everyone knew that they could not casually gossip about the secrets of these wealthy people. It was more practical for them to focus on working diligently. After all, it was really difficult to get a job at Gu Industries. If they were kicked out after getting a job there, they really would become destitute and homeless all of a sudden. While they had gotten rid of these servants and employees, they had no way of warning each and every single wealthy and influential family about the rumors among them. As a result, many young ladies from wealthy and influential families continued speculating if the Yun family was really planning to work with the Gu Jingze and whether Yun Luo could really sink her claws into Gu Jingze by doing this. Of course, they also admired Yun Luo immensely. She had truly paid a huge price to enter Gu Jingze's field of vision. However, they also envied her very much for being able to pay such a huge price. After all, if she really married Gu Jingze, the assets of the Gu family were worth much more than this too. In any case, rumors about the relationship between Gu Jingze and Yun Luo were already beginning to spread in high society. At the same time, Gu Jingze had already started the handover process for the arsenal. Gu Jingze looked at the document for the transfer and a hint of steeliness flashed in his eyes. He looked up and said to Qin Hao, release the news. State that the Yun family is about to buy the arsenal and take it under the wing of Yun Industries. When the time is ripe, its revenue will definitely soar and its profit will follow suit and multiply. Because the Yun family is one of the families with the largest military power in M Nation, the military equipment in M Nation will definitely be manufactured by this arsenal now. Coupled with orders from other countries, the Yun family is planning to acquire the entire arsenal with its operations. It will profit considerably. Qin Hao looked at Gu Jingze in confusion. Sir, what's the purpose of releasing this news? Gu Jingze said, no matter what method the Yun family used to persuade Mo Jinyan to cooperate with them, Mo Jinyan's goal is definitely not to help the Yun family but merely to oppose the Gu family. In the first place, Mo Jinyan has some grudge against the Gu family that we don't know about. Now, he's probably still doing this because of this grudge. He wants to get revenge against the Gu family, so he's using this chance to work with the Yun family. However, I'm releasing this news precisely to tell Mo Jinyan that the Yun family is actually working with him on the surface for its own profit. That's why they prepared billions of funds in advance. After working with him for so long, I know that he doesn't like being used. Qin Hao said, Sir, I understand. We're trying to create a rift between him and the Yun family. Gu Jingze tidied up the things in front of him slowly and leisurely. We're not really creating a rift either. We're just notifying Mo Jinyan, who may not have gotten wind of the latest news after leaving C Nation, that he has been taken advantage of. Qin Hao nodded his head in understanding. Internally, he wondered how Mo Jinyan would get back at the Yun family given his ill temper and his tendency for petty revenge. In reality, there was no disparity between all this and the Yun family's initial plan. Yun Kuoshan looked at Yun Luo. You must live up to expectations this time. As your father, I have done everything I can for you. I have even used the Yun family's last card ha. Yun Luo still looked a little unsure when she looked at Yun Kuoshan. But will Gu Jingze really abandon Lin Che because of this? Do you think he can't understand the situation? Since he has already accepted our help, it means that he has given in. Yun Kuoshan was not worried about Gu Jingze at this point. He was worried about Mo Jinyan. As expected, just then, someone suddenly said outside the Yun residence, "Sir, we have a problem. Someone is looking for you. Looks like he has ill intentions." Yun Kuoshan frowned. Seeing that his own butler was actually this frightened, the person who was here was definitely not ordinary. Outside, Mo Jinyan barged in directly with his henchmen. The atmosphere in the living room was dark and oppressive. Yun Kuoshan was completely frozen the moment he came out. "Black Hawk, what are you doing?" Outside, Mo Jinyan's henchmen chased the servants of the Yun family out. Each and every one of them was tied up and thrown out at the doorway. The Yun residence was a high-class villa. Many of the reputable wealthy and influential families in C Nation lived nearby. If they walked around and saw the Yun family's servants tied up and kneeling outside, wouldn't the Yun family become a complete disgrace? Mo Jinyan looked at Yun Kuoshan. He had a seemingly nonchalant expression on his face, but he was in fact in a comparably sullen mood. "It's nothing. It's just that they refused to let me in. I could only make them leave first so that I could meet you." "You Black Hawk, are you going to turn against me?" Yun Kuoshan's face darkened immediately. Mo Jinyan scoffed. "Yun Kuoshan, do you think that I dare not touch you? Back then, you said that you would use the arsenal to make Gu Jingze leave the Gu family and give up his position as the head of the family. Now, you're taking advantage of me on one hand but working with Gu Jingze on the other by helping him buy the arsenal. Haha, do you think that I, Mo Jinyan, am an easy target? Or do you think that I, Mo Jinyan, am an idiot who you can easily hoodwink?" Yun Kuoshan had sent him to a nation to rest because he had initially thought that Mo Jinyan would not be able to cause trouble if he found out about the purchase of the arsenal once it had been handed over. He did not expect him to find out about this so soon. Yun Kuoshan looked at Black Hawk, who had so arrogantly led his men into the Yun residence without hesitation. He had not thought that Black Hawk was so audacious. Was he not afraid of falling out with the Yun family at all? Yun Kuoshan said, "Black Hawk, get this straight. My position is aligned with yours. But it's not yet time to completely oust Gu Jingze. We have to do it in stages, step by step." Black Hawk scoffed. "Uncle Yun, do you really think I'm a 3-year-old child who is easily deceived? This wasn't what you said a few days ago. You said that now is a good chance to overthrow him, perhaps even the only chance. Don't you think it's a bit too late to change your mind now?" Yun Kuoshan's face hurt from the humiliation. He looked at Black Hawk's imposing manner and at the people who had followed him in. Then, he said furiously, "Black Hawk, get out of the Yun residence with your henchmen. Otherwise, don't blame me for being inhospitable." "Sure, I want to see how you're going to be inhospitable." A sinister expression appeared on Black Hawk's face. He took a step forward with his large leather shoe. His attitude of invincibility seemed to make Yun Kuoshan lose half the battle in terms of his aura. Chapter 886. They captured Black Hawk easily. However, Yun Kuoshan had always been crafty. He looked at Mo Jinyan and immediately said, "Black Hawk, to be honest, my older brother didn't tell you everything about your background. Don't you want to know all the details?" Mo Jinyan immediately lost his composure. There was slight disbelief in his evil gaze as he looked at Yun Kuoshan. "What are you trying to get at?" "Listen to me, Black Hawk." Yun Kuoshan walked forward and said to Mo Jinyan, "Older brother said that your father didn't know back then that you had been abandoned and looked for you for many years. He hasn't given up on finding you even now. He even specially set up his own shadow organization to search for you." Mo Jinyan's gaze remained indifferent, but there was a hint of gloominess in his expression. Yun Kuoshan asked, "Furthermore, now that he's already back, don't you want to meet him?" Mo Jinyan asked, "Has he been looking for me?" Yun Kuoshin said, of course. After all, you're still his son. If so, why didn't you tell me this before? He asked. That's because. That was because he was the trump card that the Yun family was intending to keep hidden. Since he was their trump card, how could they let him know about this? We only found out about it after he returned to Sea Nation 2. We didn't manage to tell you in time. At this moment, Yun Kuoshin had already moved closer to Mo Jinyan unknowingly. Mo Jinyan narrowed his eyes and looked straight ahead. When he suddenly felt an unfamiliar breath on him, he looked up only to see that Yun Kuoshin was right under his nose. Yun Kuoshin suddenly held up a gun. As a member of the Yun family, how could he not have a gun with him? He pointed his gun straight at Mo Jinyan's head and immediately pulled the trigger without any hesitation. However, Mo Jinyan was not to be trifled with either. He moved aside instantly and dove to the ground with lightning speed. The suppressed gun let out a muffled sound and fresh blood flowed out from Mo Jinyan's body. He felt a pain in his shoulder and looked down only to see that Yun Kuoshin had created a hole in his shoulder. However, it was fortunate that he had moved quickly. Otherwise, the hole would probably be in his head now. A hint of frustration flashed in Yun Kuoshin's eyes. He could not believe that he had not killed his target in one shot. However, when he had walked over earlier, he had pressed the alarm in his other hand. The servants in the Yun residence's courtyard rushed out behind him the moment he pulled the trigger. In order to round up the bandits, he had to capture the ringleader first. They rushed forth and immediately surrounded the injured Mo Jinyan. The people at the back started fighting Black Hawk's henchmen. The entire living room of the Yun residence turned into a battlefield. However, the evil Yun Kuoshin instructed his men to point their guns at Mo Jinyan's head. Seeing the situation, Mo Jinyan's henchmen could only surrender in grief and indignation. Mo Jinyan glared fiercely before a hint of a cold smile flowed in his eyes. Yun Kuoshin, everyone says that the Yun family is full of vile characters. I didn't notice it before. Yun Kuoshin scoffed, all is fair in war. Yun Kuoshin looked outside and instructed his men, untie all of those useless people. The people at the doorway were still bound up. Outside, the passers-by had seen them clearly. Although they knew that this was the Yun residence and that they had no right to pry into the affairs of such wealthy and influential families, they could always crowd around and watch the fun while passing by. Thus, many people had probably witnessed the earlier scene. Yun Kuoshin was nearly dying from anger. He looked at Mo Jinyan and the only thought in his mind was that he would definitely punish him for this later. However, just then, unexpectedly, the muffled sound of clapping traveled in from outside. I didn't expect to arrive in time to join in the fun. Mo Jinyan and Yun Kuoshin looked up at the same time and looked out in disbelief. With the Gu family's security guards alongside him, Gu Jingze had already appeared at the doorway in an unhurried manner. He behaved as if he had really only passed by. But there was no way a member of the Gu family would pass by this area. Gu Jingze walked in and Yun Kuoshin's eyes flashed immediately. Oh, Jingze, you're here just in time. I wonder if you're looking for this Black Hawk. After I found out that he betrayed you, I got very angry. Now. Gu Jingze cast a cold glance at this fickle man who was very good at sizing up the situation. Uncle Yun, it's true that I've been looking for him. Now, it seems that you've already done it for me. However, the Gu family naturally has its own ways to deal with traitors. Thus, I want to take Black Hawk with me. Is that all right with you? Of course, Yun Kuoshin wanted to refuse. If Black Hawk stayed here, there would still be time for his older brother to come and speak to Black Hawk personally to dispel any misunderstandings between Black Hawk and the Yun family. But if he went to the Gu residence. However, it was not as if Yun Kuoshin had not noticed the Gu family's guards. Gu Jingze had come here prepared with his men. Even if the people in the Yun residence and Black Hawk's henchmen attacked together, they would be no match for the Gu family. Yun Kuoshin could only clench his teeth while thinking about how people could bring themselves to say that the Yun family was full of despicable people. Gu Jingze was 100% a despicable person. He had obviously known about the Yun family's relationship with Black Hawk for a long time. That was why he had pretended to work with the Yun family when in actual fact, he was waiting for the Yun family and Black Hawk to cut each other's throats so that he could profit from the side stands. What the hell? When had he discovered the Yun family's relationship with Black Hawk? Their relationship should have been hidden completely. Of course, Yun Kuoshan did not know that Gu Jingze had simply analyzed the situation. He felt that the Yun family had prepared the funds to purchase the arsenal a long time ago. Thus, he guessed that they had already worked out a strategy with Black Hawk. They had known early on that something would go wrong with the arsenal, so they had prepared the money in advance. Yun Kuoshan knew that he would not be able to go up against Gu Jingze and could only admit defeat. He smiled and said, "All right. Take him with you. The two of you can settle matters between you." Gu Jingze smiled. "In that case, thank you for your help." Gu Jingze looked down at Black Hawk. When their eyes met, Black Hawk fidgeted slightly and averted his gaze. Gu Jingze took a step forward. "I really didn't want things between us to get to this stage. But Black Hawk, you should know what happens to the people who offend me, Gu Jingze. Seeing as we were once acquainted, I won't do anything worse to you than what I did to the Fang family." Black Hawk suddenly started cracking up as he looked at Gu Jingze. "That's up to you, but there's someone I want to meet before I die. I don't think a prisoner has the right to bargain with me." Gu Jingze looked straight ahead coldly. Black Hawk narrowed his eyes. "I want to meet Gu Qigong. Gu Jingze, you think that you know everything and that you have everything mapped out, but you don't know that you've been kept in the dark from the beginning. And if I die, you will never know about this for the rest of your life." Gu Jingze looked at Black Hawk with dark eyes. Black Hawk's gaze was sharp and he met Gu Jingze's eyes without showing any weakness. The two of them looked at each other for a long time. Gu Jingze waved his hand. "Take him away first." Just like that, without striking a single blow, Gu Jingze took Mo Jinyan into captivity first. The crowd of people at the doorway dissipated, leaving only a few people who took the tied-up Mo Jinyan away from the Yun residence. Seeing this, the spectators outside felt that the scene at the Yun residence today was a truly magnificent sight. Although they did not know what had happened, they also understood that this was a huge affair that involved several wealthy and influential families. If not, so many people from such powerful families would not have suddenly gathered here. Chapter 887. I want to see Union one last time. In the multi-purpose warehouse of the arsenal. Mo Jinyan looked around and laughed grimly. "So you never intended to sell the arsenal to the Yun family for cheap, right?" Gu Jingze said, "This is a business that will only profit. It's just that no one could afford to start it. Why should I sell it to the Yun family? The Liu family has already bought this factory and ownership will be transferred to them in no time. Right now, we have continued fulfilling all the orders that were previously suspended, including orders from America and England. Don't worry, even without you, the arsenal is operating quite well." Mo Jinyan laughed even more. "So you already calculated everything from the start. You wanted to lure me out to find out who was wreaking havoc behind the scenes, right? Fine, fine, I was one step behind you and didn't consider these things." Gu Jingze said, "Yes. You miscalculated. The victor becomes a king and the loser a bandit. You can start thinking about how exactly you want to die." "No." Mo Jinyan looked up at Gu Jingze. "You can't kill me." Gu Jingze scoffed. "Doesn't this sound familiar to you? Fang Jimin also said the same thing when we killed him together." Mo Jinyan shook his head. "I'm not like the Fang family after all. After you broke up the Fang family, you wasted so much energy putting them in good order. My men are even more difficult to tidy up. It's easy for you to kill me. The difficult part is preventing my men from retaliating. Thus, you can't just kill me." "Ha, I like doing challenging things the most." Gu Jingze looked at Mo Jinyan. "After being acquainted with me for some time, you should know that of all things, I hate being deceived the most." Mo Jinyan's face darkened. He smiled faintly with slight distress in his eyes. Mo Jinyan knew that he had trusted him. That was why he wanted to kill him all the more now. Mo Jinyan said, "Sure. If I will definitely die, I want to meet Union." Gu Jingze said, "Initially, you said that you wanted to meet my father. Now, you say you want to meet Union. Don't you think you have too many demands? Forget it if you won't allow me to meet your father. But Union is my daughter. You were the one who told me this. If Lin Che finds out about this one day and figures out that you killed Union's biological father, don't you think she will feel regretful and find it a pity?" She treats Union as her biological daughter, but you won't even let Union see her father one last time. Gu Jingze only jolted slightly at the mention of Lin Che's name. Lin Che was his weak spot. However, she was his most heartwarming weak spot. Mo Jinyan had seized his weakness. Indeed, he did not want Lin Che to be unhappy at all. Even a little would not do. Gu Jingze narrowed his eyes and looked at Mo Jinyan silently for a long time. In the end, he said to the people beside him, "Get someone to watch him." Thereafter, Gu Jingze left the place first. Mo Jinyan drew in a deep breath and leaned back. The bullet wound on his body was still bleeding and his face was still deathly pale. However, it seemed that he had already forgotten what pain felt like. In reality, this bit of pain was nothing to him. He had 7 or 8 such wounds on his body. This didn't even include the wounds he got from being hacked by knives and gashed by daggers. But he had never thought that he would just die like this one day. Lin Che was currently in her room. Yu Minmin called her very soon after and told her about the gossip she had heard in her boredom. "Just now, I heard the servants say that Gu Jingze has already captured Black Hawk and taken him away. Apparently, he brought more than 100 people and directly blocked the Yun family's doorway." The Yun family was terribly frightened. From the outside, it seemed as if it was going to turn violent. But in the end, they came out without a scratch, although Black Hawk was carried out. It seems that no one knows if he's dead or alive or what happened in the end. Lin Che became even more anxious hearing this. "Why do you have so much information? Get your subordinates to listen to the rumors going around." "Alright then, Gu Jingze's servants have never dared to shoot their mouths off. Gu Jingze doesn't like it. I better let my subordinates go and ask around." "Oh, right, you have your own personal army now. Of course, you'll find out whatever you want to. But don't worry, Gu Jingze is so powerful. No one can harm him." Lin Che felt slightly relieved hearing this. Just then, she looked outside and saw that Gu Jingze had actually returned. He removed his coat and walked in quickly. Lin Che put down the phone and hastily walked out. "What happened? You're okay, right?" After hearing what Yu Minmin said, Lin Che felt that things must be very complicated, so she was still on edge right now. Gu Jingze looked at her and heaved a sigh. It inevitably made Lin Che slightly worried. What happened? She felt that he was looking at her a little differently. Gu Jingze said, "Lin Che, there's something I've been keeping from you." "What's up?" Gu Jingze pulled her in and gestured for everyone to leave. "To be honest, I've known who Union's biological father is for a long time. But I didn't have a chance to tell you." "What?" As expected, Lin Che was shocked. "You must keep this a secret for the time being. You can't tell anyone." "Alright, tell me." He clearly knew about the relationship between Mu Feiran and Lin Che. She was so tender and doting towards Union. After all, she had watched her grow up from the moment she had been born. Her feelings towards her were really different. "It's Black Hawk." Lin Che felt a wave of shock. She wondered if she had misheard him. But of course, she would not have heard wrongly. She could only say that she felt as if the world had turned into a fantasy world. Why was it him? Back then, he had conspired with Li Mingyu to take revenge on me and C Nation. Didn't he kidnap you after that? It's also during the time that he was staying in the hotel where Mu Feiran was holding her wedding banquet. Then, Lin Che still remembered the events of that night. She simply felt that it was all too much a coincidence. But at the same time, coincidences such as these were intricately related. Although they seemed to be contrary to expectations, they were reasonable when she actually thought about them. Then, now, Mo Jinyan is with me. He wants to see Union one last time. So I'm here to ask you what you want to do. One last time. This meant that Gu Jingze was going to. Lin Che's eyes were glimmering. She had initially been filled with dislike towards Black Hawk. But she felt differently now that she knew he was Union's father. No matter what, that was Union's biological father. If he died, Union would really be fatherless. As someone with a child as well, she felt her heart ache even more when she shifted the scenario to her own child. She said, "Let him see her." Gu Jingze said, "In that case, I'll make arrangements." "Can't I tell Feiran about this?" Lin Che asked. Gu Jingze said, for the time being, it's better not to tell her. They don't have any feelings for each other. It would be meaningless to tell her. Lin Che froze. Did he mean that whilst they had no relationship, Mu Feiren could continue living as if Black Hawk had never existed if something actually happened to him now? Chapter 888. I'm the illegitimate son of your family. That was true. Lin Che said, in that case, I'll follow your wishes. Gu Jingze nodded. Lin Che said, I'm worried that Union will be afraid if she sees him alone. Can I bring her there? Gu Jingze looked at her. Do you want to go as well? His gaze was fixed. Of course, he had his own considerations. Lin Che said, that's right. I have to watch over Union. Otherwise, I'm worried that Union will be in danger. I'm also worried that she will be afraid. Gu Jingze glanced at Dongzi. This was also a chance for her guards to learn through experience. He nodded his head in agreement. Sure, be careful while you're there. Black Hawk is not a simple person either. Lin Che drew in a breath and felt a strangely heavy feeling in her heart. She picked up Union but did not tell her what they were going to do. All she said was that she was taking Union out to have some fun. Union trusted her immensely and sensibly did not probe further. At the heavily guarded arsenal. Contrary to her expectations, everything here looked very modern. It was not the kind of factory she had imagined to be dirty and filled with machines. As if he had sensed her curiosity, Gu Jingze said beside her, this arsenal produces arms of the highest quality. We have many researchers. Don't think that it's really just a factory. I see. Gu Jingze said, come this way. The metal doors opened. Inside, Mo Jinyan seemed to be on the verge of death. He was lying on the ground with a pool of fresh blood beside him. The moment Union saw Black Hawk, she immediately said, Uncle Mo. Black Hawk broke into a smile and sat up from the floor, deathly pale. Union. Union looked up. Auntie, what happened to Uncle? Lin Che paused. Her heart sank. Union, Uncle is just tired. Then, will Uncle not be tired if I go and massage his legs? Yes. Lin Che looked up and glanced meaningfully at Dongzi. Dongzi understood and brought Union to Mo Jinyan. Black Hawk looked at Lin Che gratefully. He faintly signaled to her with his eyes before smiling and meeting Union's gaze. Union, be good, come over to me. This was Lin Che's first time seeing Union with her father, basking in paternal love. But it could be her last time. Lin Che really felt her heart soften just a little. She wanted to ask Gu Jingze if he could let Black Hawk off once for Union's sake. However, from the start, they did not know why Black Hawk had persistently been at odds with the Gu family. Now that Gu Jingze had made a fool of him, he would definitely hate Gu Jingze even more than he did in the past. He was a sick cat now. Once he recovered and turned into a tiger, they themselves would be in danger. Lin Che thought that she had to get used to this cutthroat environment to survive in high society. She narrowed her eyes at Black Hawk. They did not know how much time had passed. It seemed that Black Hawk could no longer lift his arm. He said, Union, be good. Go ahead, Uncle is going to sleep. Union said obediently, okay. Have a good sleep, Uncle. I won't disturb you. I'll come to play with you again next time. Next time. Would there even be a next time? Lin Che's heart seized up. She frantically went over, carried Union, and wanted to leave. Over there, Black Hawk had already collapsed onto the ground completely. Gu Jingze narrowed his eyes and glanced meaningfully at his men. Go and take him away. They immediately walked towards Black Hawk and wanted to drag him away. However, they did not expect that Black Hawk, who had just collapsed onto the ground and looked to be half dead, would suddenly spring to his feet. With one arm, he grabbed one of the people in front of him and firmly grasped the gun at his waist. Then, he threw the person to the ground with one hand and pulled the trigger with his other hand, hitting the person's chest. Lin Che was shocked. Hearing the noise, she turned around only to see that the barrel of Black Hawk's gun was aimed at her. Her eyes darted. Beside her, Gu Jingze had already lifted his gun. Black Hawk said, we can compete to see whose gun is faster, yours or mine. But the stakes are higher. Gu Jingze froze. Lin Che turned to look at him. Why must you do this, Black Hawk? Black Hawk narrowed his eyes. When you've fought hard to survive for so many years, you will know how much you fear death. I'm afraid of dying because it isn't worth it. Black Hawk was about to continue when someone immediately flew over from the side out of the blue. Black Hawk was still not sure who he was, but Lin Che knew that it was Dongzi. He threw himself onto Black Hawk without hesitation. Black Hawk paused. The next moment, he had already been pushed to the ground. Gu Jingze then shot him with sharp eyes and nimble fingers. With a bang, Black Hawk's thigh was instantly shot as well. Black Hawk collapsed onto the ground. His eyes were lidded and his face was completely contorted in a pained expression. Gu Jingze's gaze turned ice cold. He held his gun with both hands while walking towards him step by step. Then, he immediately pressed the barrel of the gun to his head. See you again, but I'm afraid that will be in your next life. Gu Jingze placed his finger on the trigger of his gun. Gu Jingze, your father once had an illegitimate son. Do you know this? Just then, Black Hawk suddenly looked up. Gu Jingze paused. However, when he looked at his face, the chill in his gaze had not lessened. Black Hawk stared at him. Gu Jingze looked at him too. What tricks are you trying to pull again? Black Hawk laughed out loud in an extremely bleak manner. It's me. Didn't he ask you to help him look for a baby? A weak and helpless infant still in his swaddling clothes. That's me. It sent a wave of shock through Gu Jingze. There was a hint of bewilderment in his eyes. He looked at Black Hawk loathingly. Do you know that messing with me will only make you die a more terrible death? Black Hawk shook his head, sadness in his eyes. You have no idea. None of you know. None of you know how your crazy grandfather threw me into the ice and snow to die. Someone saved me, brought me up, and told me everything. He also told me that the Gu family will not allow me to exist because my existence taints the reputation of the Gu family. I must die because I'm an illegitimate child. Gu Jingze did not believe it. He did not believe it. He pressed the barrel of his gun even harder on Black Hawk's head. That's impossible. My father has never had a mistress, nor has he ever had an illegitimate son. Black Hawk chuckled. Go and ask him. Do you dare to? Ask him how he could be so cowardly as to let someone abandon his child. How could he just let his child freeze to death in the wind and snow? But it's a pity that I have always been very lucky. I survived it. Furthermore, I've come all the way here. I'm here in C Nation, right under the nose of the Gu family. Gu Jingze's eyes twitched. He slowly moved his gun away. As for Black Hawk, he had already lost an excessive amount of blood under the pressure. His gaze was unfocused and he really collapsed onto the ground completely after some time. Lin Che looked on in surprise. She quickly walked over and pulled Gu Jingze's arm. What happened? Is what he said true? Gu Jingze shook his head, his gaze still shaking. Lin Che looked at the unconscious Black Hawk and hastily turned around to instruct, get a car here to take him to the hospital. Chapter 889. I won't kill you for the time being. At the hospital, Black Hawk underwent blood transfusions and operations to remove the bullets and restore his arm. 1 hour felt as long as a century. Gu Jingze sat outside the operating room emitting a cold aura from head to toe. None of the people around him dared to go up to him. Lin Che was the only one still standing beside him. She held his arm with one hand and looked at him quietly, waiting for him to regain his composure. Gu Jingze only drew in a breath after a long time and patted Lin Che's hand. I'm fine. Lin Che looked at Gu Jingze. I would be very surprised if I were you. He was just about to kill Black Hawk but did not expect Black Hawk to actually be his father's illegitimate son. He found something like this to be a little inconceivable. He had never heard his father or his mother mention this before. Gu Shand had never talked about this either. Gu Jingze looked at Lin Che. I'm just a little surprised. But I will definitely find out whether or not this is true and what exactly is going on. Lin Che said, if Black Hawk was speaking the truth, then there will be a reason for why he has been targeting the Gu family and why he has persistently been at odds with the Gu family. It's probably because he feels aggrieved at being abandoned. Gu Jingze proceeded to think about it too. That's right, he didn't do anything to me. He stood on my side when he knew that I was going to go up against grandfather and wanted to help me overthrow him. Perhaps he really hates grandfather. Lin Che said, I don't know if I'm being too soft-hearted. When I look at it from this perspective, if there are extenuating circumstances for everything, he doesn't seem that evil anymore. Gu Jingze looked inside. Chen Yucheng walked out of the room and looked at the two of them before taking off his gloves, which were still stained with blood. His condition has already stabilized. He's awake now. Gu Jingze nodded. I have something to ask him. No problem. He's in a very lucid state right now. Gu Jingze walked into the ward. Black Hawk lay there. After the blood transfusion, there was more color in his face and he looked as if he had recovered significantly. These men, all of them, really recovered very quickly. Lin Che thought of Gu Jingze. She felt that he had recovered very quickly after getting injured. Black Hawk was lying there when he saw the two of them come in. Didn't Gu Qigong come here earlier? Given your personality, it's very surprising that you didn't immediately check with him. Gu Jingze looked at him. Who else knows about this? Black Hawk said, the Yun family. Gu Jingze looked at him. Are you trying to get revenge on my grandfather or on me? Black Hawk breathed in and looked at Gu Jingze solemnly. Initially, I wanted to get back at the Gu family. But later on, I felt that I must take revenge on the right person. I just want Gu Shan to receive the punishment he deserves. He was so cruel towards me when I was still an infant. He should not be living as if he deserves it. Gu Jingze said, Mo Jinyan, I will investigate this matter thoroughly. Before that, you should stay here and recuperate. Mo Jinyan looked at Gu Jingze. You're not going to kill me? Gu Jingze huffed. I will decide what to do with you again after I find out the truth. Lin Che watched from the side and said to Mo Jinyan, as for Mu Feiren, you yourself know what you did to her. I hope you can think about what you should do about Feiren and what you should do about Union. Since you didn't know about this before, there's no reason to blame you. Now that you know, I think that you should think about how to deal with this. Mo Jinyan looked at Lin Che. I've thought about it, but I don't want to talk to her about this now. It was my mere moment of impulse back then that resulted in an irreversible outcome. I didn't know who exactly she was. I didn't know that she was pregnant with my child either. I'm planning to take it seriously now, so I don't want her to find out so soon. It would scare her and put her at arm's length as well. When Lin Che heard him say this, she momentarily felt that he was actually not as bad as she had thought. She nodded. In that case, I look forward to your performance. Lin Che left this place with Gu Jingze. They instructed Chen Yucheng to stay here to watch over him and told the people outside to enforce very tight security. When they went out, Chen Yucheng was still complaining, you left him here with me, whose fault will it be if he escapes? Even if he doesn't escape, if his henchmen come after me, creates trouble, and burns down my office, what am I going to do? Ha! Gu Jingze said, this is your office, but I'm the one who gave you the money to build it too. I will pay for it if they burn it down. Chen Yucheng was merely complaining. Of course, Gu Jingze would not actually let that happen. However, having such a troublesome figure at his office did indeed make his stress multiply. But Gu Jingze only left Black Hawk here because he was a special case. Gu Jingze had placed him in Chen Yucheng's care only because he was planning to treat him differently. Although it had only been a few days, news about this incident had already spread amongst the wealthy and influential families. Recently, the Gu family had really been going through troubled times. Everyone did not know what exactly had happened this time either. Who exactly among the Yun family, the Gu family, and Mo Jinyan had gotten into a fight? In any case, they were not afraid of the matter blowing up since they were just watching the fun. Everyone still wanted to see how exactly they had resolved the matter. It was a pity, however, that the Gu family had done nothing ever since. The Yun family remained behind closed doors because of this incident too. Everyone had no source of gossip right now. At the Gu residence, Lin Che looked at Gu Jingze, tugged at him and asked, are you planning to ask father about this? Gu Jingze asked, how will I do that? Am I going to ask him? Black Hawk says that he's your son. Is this true? Lin Che leaned towards him, looked at him, and said, I know it's very difficult for you to accept it right now. But I will stand on your side no matter what decision you make. Gu Jingze looked at Lin Che. However, He turned only to see that everyone was keeping a distance from him. It seemed that no one had come close to him today. Lin Che saw him staring at his surroundings and said to him, "No need to look. After seeing your foul expression, the servants all ran far away and don't want to bother with you." Only then did Gu Jingze realize that everyone had disappeared. He looked at Lin Che. He was lucky that she was not afraid of him. He pinched her face. "Then, why didn't you run far away?" Lin Che said, "I wanted to run too, but you look really pitiful all alone here with a foul expression on your face." As a result, Gu Jingze's expression turned even fouler. "Just see how I deal with you later. No, I know the secrets of high society now. If you mistreat me, I'll reveal all of these huge secrets." Gu Jingze chased after her. "Sure, then, how should I block your mouth?" "By giving me money. How much do you think such a huge secret is worth?" "I'm talking about that mouth of yours down there." Gu Jingze. Gu Jingze hugged Lin Che. He needed consolation right now, but no one could comfort his tumultuous heart right now, except her. He felt that his heart could only feel at ease when he was buried in her body. Thus, he lifted Lin Che in one swift motion and headed straight for the bedroom. Lin Che giggled while pushing him, but he did not waver at all. As Lin Che was yielding to him after making a show of resistance, she could only follow him into the bedroom. Outside, the servants only heaved a sigh of relief when they heard Gu Jingze and Lin Che's giggling. Earlier, they had truly been frightened out of their wits when Gu Jingze had returned. Now that he was finally smiling, all of them felt much more at ease as well. It seemed that no one else but their madam could make Gu Jingze smile again. They revered Lin Che even more. They felt that they definitely could not go wrong if they stood on Lin Che's side in the future. Chapter 890, doesn't that mean they can't be together anymore? The next morning, Gu Jingze was eating with Lin Che. Gu Jingze's appetite was quite good and he ate a lot. He looked at Lin Che and said, "I'm going back to the old residence later. Come along with me, I can drop you off at the company on my way there." Lin Che said, "Sure." She looked at Gu Jingze's complexion. He looked much better than he did yesterday. Yesterday, his entire face was as green as jade, but he looked much better today. "Why are you going home? Are you going to ask about Black Hawk?" Lin Che asked. "I'm going there to sound them out first. I'm going to see how much the people at home know," Gu Jingze said. Lin Che said, "Sure." She thought about it and said, "But if you're really related to Black Hawk by blood, wouldn't that mean that you have another older brother?" Gu Jingze looked up. "Whether or not I will acknowledge him is another matter." "All right, I understand. But even though he counts as your brother by blood, how you feel is another thing altogether. Having another biological brother doesn't mean that you have another brother in your heart either. In your heart, your older brother is Gu Jingming, but it's not difficult to accept that you have another biological older brother. Just like me, I have so many sisters at home, but they're merely my sisters by blood. None of them are my true sisters. I think that my sisters now are probably Minmin and Yorin, and Abby too." Gu Jingze smiled. He quite enjoyed listening to her say such nonsense. It did not irritate him at all either. Lin Che suddenly remembered something and immediately said with a surprised expression, "Oh no, that's not good. Union is Black Hawk's biological daughter. And Black Hawk is related to you by blood. Doesn't that mean that Nianian and Union are cousins too?" Gu Jingze chewed on his bread. "What's the matter with that?" "Of course, it's a problem." Lin Che continued despondently, "What a pity. Initially, I thought that Union could be my daughter-in-law. She's so cute and so beautiful. But if they're cousins, then I can't fulfill my dream. Ha, how am I to break this to Nianian?" Gu Jingze asked, "What's there to break to him?" "Nianian has been saying that he will consider marrying Union when they grow up. But now..." Gu Jingze saw that Lin Che was actually worried. He approached her and tapped her head. "You think way too much. How old is he? He can think about this again when he grows up. If they're related by blood, then they're related by blood. They won't be able to be together. He can just consider someone else." Lin Che scoffed. "Seriously, that's your son? Since you want to be a kind mother, I can only be a strict father." His eyes curved in a smile. But if you give birth again to a daughter one day, get lost. Lin Che huffed and said with a flushed face, who wants to give birth to your child? Gu Jingze smiled. After the two of them finished eating, Gu Jingze left and took Lin Che with him. Lin Che was still thinking about how to tell Nianian about this. She pondered over it and decided to go to the kindergarten to look for Nianian after settling work matters at the company. Things were now going smoothly for Nianian at the kindergarten. Neither the teachers nor the principal dared to provoke him and gave in to him in all aspects. The children all felt that he was a little hero. Seeing that the teachers all yielded to him, the children naturally worshipped him immensely. Many girls would even give him snacks or a lollipop from time to time to express their goodwill. At such a young age, he already seemed to be everyone's lover. Although parents were not allowed to pick up their children before the designated time, the teacher naturally gave Lin Che very special treatment when she saw that she had arrived. She invited her to the VIP room to wait and told her that Nianian would be here shortly. When Nianian came over, he looked at Lin Che and asked, "Mother, what are you doing here?" Lin Che was really hurt when she saw Nianian's expression of distaste. She felt that Nianian was way too independent. Even though children would all become like this when they grew up, he had become independent way too early. Lin Che asked, "Why? Can't I come to pick you up?" "It's not time yet, right?" He pulled his sleeve up and looked at the wristwatch on his arm, which was still chubby with baby fat. Lin Che said, "I missed you and came to pick you up. Can't I do that?" "Mother, it's not because something happened at home, right?" Gu Jingze said with a doubtful expression. Lin Che shouted, "Of course not." Gu Jingze said, "Then, why are you being so mushy all of a sudden in dramas? This is probably a prelude to some major incident. Don't watch dramas so often in the future." Lin Che pulled Gu Jingze with her and into the car. Lin Che asked him, "How do you find the kindergarten?" "It's quite good." Lin Che asked furtively, "Is there any pretty girl that is to your taste?" Gu Jingze looked up. "Mother, everyone says that people from rich and influential families marry early. But I don't have to marry that early, right?" Lin Che shouted again, "What nonsense are you spouting?" But after thinking about it, it did seem that her questions were a little inappropriate. She dismissed it with a wave and rephrased, "You always said that you may want to marry Union in the future, so I wanted to ask you if you will insist on marrying Union when you grow up." Gu Jingze said, "I merely said that that's a possibility. After all, I've known her for so many years and we're familiar with each other. It would be a total waste of time to look for another girl." Lin Che thought that this little brain of his was wired differently from her own. She asked, "So you mean that Union is just a reference? I thought that you really liked Union and genuinely wanted to marry her." "I do like Union a lot." Gu Jingze continued, "Even though she can be very stupid at times, she's still very obedient." Gu Jingze sat there and fiddled with his legs. Lin Che asked, "Then, what if you can't marry Union?" "Why can't I marry her?" Gu Jingze looked up. Lin Che said, "What if Union becomes your younger sister?" "My younger sister?" Gu Jingze looked at her. "Why would she be my younger sister? She and my father." "That's not what I meant. Isn't it because Aunt Farron isn't married yet? There are so many handsome men in the Gu family. If she marries into the Gu family, Union will become your younger sister. In that case, you won't be able to marry her." Gu Jingze thought about it. "But I can still play with her, right?" "Of course. If she's your younger sister, you can still play with her all the time like you do now." "Then can I choose her husband?" "That would be a bit difficult after all, there's no way you can control what kind of boys she will meet or like in the future. But you can still offer her your opinion." Gu Jingze said, "All right then, I'm just worried that she'll be cheated since she's so silly." "Silly." Lin Che continued, "Every one of us will help her carefully examine the man. If anyone dares to deceive her, we definitely won't let him off." If Black Hawk was her father, if they could even acknowledge each other one day, given that Black Hawk was so quick to point his assault rifle at people, Lin Che felt that probably no one would dare to deceive Union.